Here we are back at the Houdini Museum. Now, a big part of Houdini's life that the general public knows about is his fight against spiritualists and people who talk to the dead, which we all know is impossible. Once you're dead...
Except you, Mayor. Mayor, I think
I'll be back. I'll be back.
Mayor's definitely talked to a lot of dead magicians or magicians that should have been dead after they see him trying to do some of Mayor's mind magic tricks.
No, I put him to sleep. I don't kill him. I want to clarify that. But... So before we get into the spiritual side of Houdini and how he fought spiritualists, let's take a look at this bust.
Houdini, before he died, actually planned on having a beautiful bronze bust cast of himself, and he wanted it placed on his cemetery plot in the future, where he buried his mother and father at McPhillis Cemetery in Queens. The first bust was put up there after Houdini died in 1926. It was up there all the way until 1975 when vandals destroyed the first bust. The Society of American Magicians created this bust, and this bust was on the gravesite from 1976 to 1983. Then, this bust was stolen. No, Mayor, not by me. It was stolen. And this bust disappeared for a period of 19 years. And then the Society of American Magicians, Parent Assembly number 1, was nice enough to loan us this bust that was on the gravesite. Another subsequent bust has been placed on the gravesite since then, but this bust was actually on Houdini's gravesite. What's interesting is when the real Ghostbusters came into our museum and the Fantasma magic shop, these are the guys with the whole backpacks looking for energy and ghosts. You can't make this stuff up. They were actually freaked out when they started feeling the energy in the room, and this went off the charts. They were here from 1 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and the guys were absolutely scared of this bust. So let's show some ways of how mediums and spiritualists did actually scare people into believing that they were actually able to communicate with their loved ones. Come this way. The whole spiritualism movement, well, it kind of got going in 1848 in Hydesville, New York, well, due to these 3 sisters, the Fox sisters. Supposedly, they are able to communicate to the spirits in their house with a variety of rapping sounds that were able to become, well, apparent at the most unusual times during the so-called seances. The secret was, which the Fox sisters later revealed, they didn't have spiritualistic powers, it was just a trick. The Fox sisters created the most amazing spiritualistic atmosphere because they could produce so-called spirits in their home by simply taking off their shoes and snapping their toes to make snapping sounds. They were double jointing their toes, and they convinced the whole world that they had these spiritualistic powers. Well, Houdini and Bess, in their early years, to make $1, actually did do some seances to begin with. It's ironic that they did seances to begin with, but then they became on a warpath against the spiritualist. In fact, the spiritualist became on a warpath against Harry Houdini. So this really, spiritualism took off about right after World War I, when many people were trying to communicate to their deceased loved ones, and that was also the time of the pandemic, unfortunately. Houdini got so outraged listening to everyone trying to communicate and be taken advantage by local spiritualists that he decided to add another part to his show. Houdini had 3 parts of his show. He had magic. Well, he might do such things as coins appearing in a glass casket. He might transform a woman into a large bouquet of flowers. He might vanish a bowl of water. Even at one time he vanished an elephant. Or he might walk through a brick wall. Houdini also did his King of Cards act that he did as a kid, some card manipulation on stage, and even did a trick called Flight of Time, amongst other illusions. That's his magic portion. Then he did his escape portion, and then he did debunking the local spiritualist. Houdini would send a front person to the town before he got there. One lady named Rose Mackenberg, she was known as being the queen of disguises. She would have all these different disguises. Why? Because the spiritualist movement said, watch out for a woman being dressed up like this or acting like that. So this woman would go into the seance saying how she might have lost a loved one or her husband. She would report back to Houdini. Houdini would then come in costume and then all of a sudden would whip off his disguise and say, I am the great Houdini and I shall expose you on stage tomorrow at the theater. Lo and behold, Houdini sure did that. So what did he do? How can you make ghosts bump in the night? These are actually the props that we obtained. Initially, they were given from Houdini to Jim Collins, Houdini's assistant, then from Jim Collins to his widow, and then to Larry Weeks. And then we were able to obtain these through David Haverson. These are the original props that Houdini used to show on stage how ghosts were made to go bump in the night. So let me show you one of the cool pieces. You can see this plum hand. So during a seance, the medium would say, everyone, we're going to turn off the lights, and once the lights are out, everyone hold on to the person's wrist next to you. The medium would take the metal hand, they would wrap it around the person's wrist, and the medium's hand is now free, but the person still feels the grip and the weight of the medium's hand. He would then go underneath the table and either possibly get a spirit trumpet, mayor, my magic. No, I like Fantasma magic, sorry. And he might get something like an extension rod. Now, what does this look like? Get going, Mayor. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. This can go 20 feet across the room. And ghosts would appear on top of the attendees during the spiritual seance. You can't make this stuff up, folks. You can't make it up. Now you're seeing how Casper the Ghost is made to appear. So now Houdini was on a warpath where spiritualists are saying, Houdini, you shall have some type of accident happen to you very soon. Houdini also had a plethora of lawsuits and slander against him, where Houdini constantly had to go to court to prove what he said wasn't really slander, just experience. Houdini even in 1926 went before Congress to say they should outlaw spiritualism to prevent spiritualists and mediums taking advantage of bereaved widows or people that have lost their loved ones. And unfortunately, Congress never passed that fortune-telling medium act that Houdini was trying to get passed. So some other things that happened with Houdini and spiritualism. Houdini had all these different lawsuits against him from the local spiritualists. And he also had a rivalry with at first his friend, but with a very well-known author, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, the one and only Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually believed that Houdini had spiritualistic powers. It all started with when Houdini was about to do the metamorphosis trunk. Houdini had his jacket on. He asked Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to tie the knots around him and seal the knots. And Houdini said, are you able to remove my jacket while I'm tied? Sir Arthur Conan Doyle says, no, I can't with your hands tied like that. Houdini went behind the curtain, 1, 2, 3, he took off his jacket while behind the curtain, or did the spirits help Houdini get the jacket off? Houdini then asked for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's jacket. Houdini went behind the curtain. Lo and behold, the spirits helped Houdini get Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's jacket on while his hands are still tied up. Houdini went inside the bag. He went inside the metamorphosis trunk. The trunk was then secured with ropes. Best Houdini would go on top. 1, 2, 3. At the count of 3, Houdini was out of the trunk, missing Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's jacket. Bess Houdini was inside the sack. She comes out. She's wearing Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's jacket while she is still secured. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was flabbergasted. He says, Houdini, admit it to the world that you have spiritualistic powers. You're able to dematerialize through the walls of the trunk. Houdini says, it's just a trick. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was adamant to show Houdini that spiritualism existed. He had a seance with Lady Doyle that was a spiritualist. During the seance, she was doing some spirit writing. Supposedly, Houdini's mother was channeling into Lady Doyle, and she was fervently writing down all the things that were being communicating to her. Well, at the end of the seance, Houdini looked at the writings and said, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, I'm sorry, my mother doesn't speak English. She only spoke German at the time. And Lady Doyle says, maybe in heaven she learned English. Who knew? There was an answer for everything. But then Houdini said, no, no, no. It was not possible. Then Sir Arthur Conan Doyle says, no, Houdini, spiritualists really exist. And spirits exist. In fact, look at this photo of fairies. Well, it was a trick double photography. Houdini says, you can produce fairies, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle? Look, I can produce Abraham Lincoln. In fact, Houdini had one of the world's largest collection of Lincoln letters in his possession. Houdini was a fervent collector of a whole wide variety of items with the performing arts and of famous pieces. Even Edgar Allan Poe's very famous writing table. So here's Houdini in spirit photo. Here he is in spirit photo. Houdini would even accept challenges from people to ask certain questions that they would like to know about from the afterworld. And here Houdini is showing how you're able to make phosphorescent, glow-in-the-dark spirit hands that would float in the air. So Houdini was a skeptic, but Houdini always wanted to believe that it was possible. And if anyone was able to get from the afterworld to the present world, Houdini set up a code with his wife and a whole wide variety of friends. Every Halloween, magicians and organizations throughout the world try to connect with Houdini. Bess Houdini and Edward Saint tried for 10 years without any luck. And here at Fantasma, here's a funny story. You can't make this up. On Halloween 2019, we had a school group of 40 teenagers. At the end of the seance, well, Houdini's handcuffs opened up by themselves. All right, that was a trick. But what wasn't a trick? There was a real butterfly in Fantasma Magic in the Houdini Museum that was floating around everywhere. Let me tell you, folks, that was so good and so freaked out. Every year, if we ever do a seance, we're going to make sure there's a butterfly. But that real butterfly was not a trick. Mayor, and that's the truth.